Have you ever felt like God made a mistake putting you here? Not in a rebellious way, but in the silent moments. The ones where you ask, why do I feel so distant from everything, even from the people who say they love me? There are those walking this world with an ache in their soul, a longing they can't explain, a weight they've carried since childhood. If that's you, this message is for you. Because maybe no one told you this before, but God never meant for you to fit in. You were set apart, not broken, not defective, sacred. There are some souls sent to earth not to find comfort, but to disrupt everything, to walk through fire while others watch, to feel what no one around you understands, to fall on their knees and cry out, God, why me? And it's in that question that your purpose begins. See, you weren't chosen because of how perfect you are. You were chosen because of how deeply you feel, how fiercely you pray, how desperately you want truth, even when it costs you everything. There's a kind of pain that only the chosen ones understand, not just rejection, but the kind of rejection that scars your faith, that makes you look up and whisper, Father, do you even see me? Yes, He sees you. He has always seen you. He was the one who hid you in plain sight, the one who allowed the world to misunderstand you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because when you carry divine purpose, you can't be raised by comfort. You must be refined in the fire. Your isolation, it was sacred. Your silence, a classroom, and your tears, they were a language of heaven that only God could translate. You see, the enemy doesn't attack the weak. He targets the anointed, the ones marked by God before birth, the ones who carry heaven's voice inside human skin. And maybe you've been silent for too long. Maybe your gifts have been buried under survival. But that ends now, because if you're hearing this, if your spirit is trembling right now, it's not by accident. This is a divine interruption. Heaven has waited for this moment, for you to remember. Remember who you are. Remember what you carry. Remember that before this world touched you, God called you His, but the truth is, this world was never your home. And the ache inside you, it's not depression, it's not anxiety. It's homesickness for a place your spirit remembers, but your mind forgot. And now, everything you felt is about to make sense, because what you're about to hear next will awaken something that's been waiting inside you your whole life. Something the enemy tried to silence, something even you forgot how to hear, because you were never meant to be normal. God didn't design you for average. He didn't send you here to blend in, to bow down, to stay silent. He carved your soul with the fingerprints of eternity, and when the world tried to shape you into something smaller, He whispered your true name in secret, a name this world could never pronounce, a purpose they would never understand. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why you've always felt different, not because something was wrong with you, but because heaven placed something right inside you that this world couldn't explain. Chosen ones are rarely crowned in public. They are crushed in private. Before you can walk in power, you must learn to kneel in pain. But here's the sacred truth no one told you. God has always been closer in your breaking than in your blessings. He was there, in the room when you wept alone, in the silence when you begged for a sign. He counted every tear you thought was wasted and turned each one into a weapon against the darkness. This is why I want you to stop what you're doing, just for a moment. Go to the comments right now and write your prayer. Write what's been locked inside. Write what's been heavy on your spirit. You don't have to write a perfect prayer. Just be honest. This is not just a video. It's a sanctuary for the broken, the weary, the ones who are barely holding on. We are building an altar right here in the comments, and I want you to know something powerful. We will pray for you. Every single name, every single cry, every word you type will be seen by those who care. So don't stay silent, don't hold it in. This is your moment to release. And if this message has already touched your heart, don't leave without clicking like. It tells the algorithm this message matters, and it helps us reach others who are still in the dark. Hit that subscribe button, not just to follow, but to step deeper into a space where your soul is seen, your wounds are understood, and your calling is confirmed, because this is just the beginning. And in the next part of this message, you'll finally understand why everything from your childhood, every strange feeling, every moment you didn't fit in, was never a curse. It was the first sign that you were chosen from the start. You didn't ask to be different. You didn't ask to carry the weight of seeing too much, feeling too deep, hearing what others dismissed. But from the very beginning, there was something in you that didn't fit into the world's boxes. You watched how others accepted things that never sat right with your spirit. You witnessed the cruelty in people, the emptiness in routine, the shallowness of the things everyone else seemed to chase. And while they played the game of life by the rules, you stood on the sidelines asking, is this really all there is? But you couldn't explain it. You couldn't describe that silent ache inside you, that invisible pull towards something beyond this reality. So you wore the mask. You laughed when you were supposed to. You agreed when your spirit screamed inside. You followed when every fiber of your being was begging you to run. And still, you never belonged. There's a reason for that. It's because you carried a mark on your soul from birth, a spiritual code etched into your DNA before your first breath, a divine seal that the world couldn't recognize, but the spiritual realm never forgot. Chosen ones aren't selected in comfort. They are forged in confusion, isolated early, tested young, not because God is cruel, but because He's calling you to a higher frequency that can't be tuned by ordinary people. The rejection wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You weren't pushed out, you were being set apart, because what's holy can't be handled by what's hollow. Every time you felt invisible, every time you were overlooked, passed by, misunderstood, or mocked, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It's because you were too much for a world that's asleep. God placed a flame in you that would be dangerous in the wrong rooms. So He didn't let you stay there. He allowed the disconnection, the tension, the loneliness, because He was guarding the treasure inside of you from being stolen or suffocated. And yet through it all, you questioned. You begged to just be like everyone else, to find peace in the noise, to stop feeling everything so deeply. But no matter how hard you tried, your spirit wouldn't let go. You couldn't kill your own calling because you were sealed with insight, with empathy, with discernment, with a hunger for truth that refused to die, no matter how many distractions the world threw at you. The more you tried to fit in, the more uncomfortable you became, and slowly the veil began to rip. You started seeing things others ignored. You began waking up in the middle of the night, heart-pounding, with visions you couldn't explain. You felt pulled to pray for people you didn't even know. You began feeling the weight of this world in your chest, like a burden no one else could feel. That wasn't anxiety, that wasn't imagination, that wasn't emotional instability, it was spiritual activation. The moment heaven begins to wake a soul, everything in hell tries to silence it. That's why your childhood was marked by warfare. Why your teenage years were full of confusion and spiritual disorientation. Why relationships crumbled around you, not because you were broken, but because your soul began rejecting what didn't align with your calling. You were marked from the womb, and maybe nobody told you that before. Maybe nobody affirmed your difference, but I will. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not cursed, you are being called. And the reason it hurts so bad is because your soul knows the truth. This world was never your home. You were sent here, on assignment, with a light too powerful to remain hidden. That's why the attacks have felt so personal. Why your life has been under pressure that others can't see. It's because you're carrying a message inside of you that hell is terrified of. You've walked through fire that should have burned you to ashes, and yet you're still here, not perfect, but breathing, awake, hungry, and chosen. The invisible mark wasn't just a symbol, it was a summons. And now the call is getting louder, the frequency is rising. The shaking around you isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to reveal you. So let me ask you now, do you feel it? That vibration in your chest when you hear these words, that familiar ache you can't quite name, the pulse of something ancient, divine and holy rising inside of you. Right now, that's not coincidence. It's the mark recognizing the message. It's your spirit standing up in the middle of your pain and saying, "This is why I never belonged." And if anything I've said has echoed your story, if you've been walking this road in silence, carrying questions you never dared speak, I want to invite you to do something bold. Go to the comments and write the words, "I was marked from birth." Or if it's easier, just write, "I felt it too." Let's fill this comment section with the voices of the chosen. Let's build a sanctuary right here, a space where heaven speaks through the broken. We're reading, we're praying, and you are not alone. And now, we're only just beginning, because what happened in your childhood, those signs you never fully understood, are about to make perfect sense. Let's keep going. They always told you something was wrong with you. You're too intense. You think too much. You're too quiet. You're too emotional. So you believed them. You questioned your nature. You thought your silence was weakness. You thought your depth was a defect. You tried to water yourself down just to make other people feel comfortable. But what if none of it was ever a flaw? What if your sensitivity wasn't fragility, but spiritual radar? What if your tendency to isolate wasn't antisocial behavior, but the beginning of your initiation? What if your constant questioning, your restless nights, your inability to just be normal wasn't disorder? It was divine design, because the truth is, you were never meant to be normal. And deep down, you've always known it. You've felt it in the way your heart aches when people lie. You've sensed it when you walked into a room and instantly absorbed the emotions no one dared to speak. You felt it when others laughed while you stared at the sky, wondering why it all felt so shallow. That's not dysfunction. That's discernment. That's spiritual intelligence. That's the language of the chosen. The world couldn't decode your frequency, so they labeled you broken. But your spirit wasn't broken. It was awakened. And awakened spirits don't follow the same path as the masses. They disrupt it. They expose it. They transcend it. You didn't come here to mirror this world. You came to reveal it, to tear down illusion, to embody truth. That's why you never fit in, because fitting in would have cost you your calling. And yes, I know it hurt. I know how hard you tried. I know the nights you cried out to God asking why you couldn't just be like them, why you always had to feel more, see more, suffer more. But what you called pain, heaven called preparation. What you thought was abandonment was really alignment, because only when everything else falls apart can your true nature finally rise. You see, the chosen are often broken early, not to punish them, but to prepare them. You were never placed in environments that could contain you, because God never meant for you to be contained. You were meant to expand, to pierce through illusion, to shake atmospheres with your presence alone. That's why you've always felt older than your age. Why you carried questions in childhood that adults couldn't answer. Why you could feel people's lies before they spoke. Why you've walked through betrayals that nearly crushed your soul, because he was stretching your capacity. You don't carry average pain because you're not carrying an average purpose. And the world was never going to applaud your difference. It was going to try to break it, control it, silence it. Because once the chosen ones realize who they are, everything around them changes. Suddenly, the job that once numbed you starts to feel like a cage. The relationship you once tolerated begins to suffocate you. The places you used to fit into start to feel like you're shrinking just to stay. Not because you've become ungrateful, but because your soul has begun to remember the assignment. You are not here to impress. You are here to impact. That's the moment the awakening begins. When you stop asking for permission to exist, when you stop waiting to be validated, when you stop searching for approval from people who were never meant to understand you. You were not made to be understood by the world. You were made to interrupt it, to wake people up, to walk in rooms and shift the spiritual climate without saying a word. to carry the light of 1,000 ancestors and yet feel like the loneliest person on earth. Because that's the weight of a mantle. That's the pressure of purpose. That's what it means to be set apart. You thought you were cursed, but really, you were being crowned. The tears you cried weren't wasted, they were collected. Heaven never missed a moment. That strange intuition, that gut feeling you've ignored for years, that voice that whispered, "This isn't for you," when everyone else said, "This is what success looks like." That was the divine blueprint. And the more you tried to bury it, the more uncomfortable life became, because the chosen ones can't hide forever. Eventually, the time comes when the soul refuses to stay silent, when your spirit begins screaming through your routines, when God begins disrupting everything that kept you small, not to destroy you, but to free you. That's where you are now, in the middle of that unraveling, where nothing feels the same, where the old version of you is cracking open and something ancient, holy, and terrifyingly powerful is beginning to rise. You feel it, don't you? That restlessness, that ache, that call you can't ignore anymore. Because now, there's no going back. Normal was never meant for you. Comfort was never your home. The narrow path has opened, and it's calling your name. And if anything in your soul is trembling right now, if your heart is pounding, your eyes stinging with tears, it's because you are remembering. So tell me, in the comments, if this is awakening something inside of you, type it, speak it, claim it, write, "I was never meant to be normal." Or if that's too much, just say, "I feel it." Let the others find your voice. Let this space become sanctuary. Let heaven echo your yes. We are watching, we are with you, and this is only the beginning. Now it's time to go even deeper, because the signs you've seen all your life were never random. They were the prophecy of what's coming next, and you're about to understand why. That ache in your chest, that silent pressure that sits just beneath your ribs, like the echo of something you lost but can't remember losing. It was never just anxiety. That feeling that no matter what you achieve, no matter how good life gets on paper, you still wake up with a lingering question in your soul. What am I doing here? That's not confusion, that's memory. Because the truth most people won't tell you is that this earth, this system, this noisy, upside-down reality was never home for you. Not spiritually, not energetically, not eternally. You've been trying to anchor yourself to a place that was only ever meant to be temporary. That's why it's never felt right. That's why you've always lived with one foot here and one foot somewhere else, like part of you is still waiting for permission to fully arrive or secretly hoping to be called back to where you came from. There's a reason why nothing ever fully satisfies your soul. There's a reason why success feels hollow, why parties feel loud but lifeless, why small talk feels unbearable, and crowds leave you drained instead of full. You're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're not too sensitive. You're ancient. You carry the frequency of another dimension, one your human mind can't fully access, but your spirit never forgot. You were placed here not to conform, but to disrupt, not to build a life in the system, but to awaken people out of it. You are a spiritual agent in a human body, a soul encoded with divine memory, sent here during a critical moment in Earth's timeline to carry out a mission you may not fully understand yet. You've had dreams, visions, flashes, maybe even from childhood, of something greater, a feeling that you came here to do something important, though no one around you ever seemed to recognize it. You felt strange for thinking this way, maybe even guilty. You told yourself you were just overthinking, just idealizing, just imagining. But now you know. Now it's all starting to make sense. You weren't imagining it, you were remembering it, because the veil is thinning. The distractions that once numbed you aren't working anymore. The world is changing faster than your mind can process, but your spirit already knew this moment was coming. That ache in your chest is the awakening of memory, the activation of sacred codes that were dormant until the time was right. And that time is now. You've always been drawn to the stars. You've always felt the pull of something far beyond this realm. You've always sensed that time doesn't work the way they say, that this body you wear like skin is only a container, not a definition. You've had moments of déjà vu so intense, you felt like you were watching a life you had already lived. Because you were, your spirit has walked dimensions, your soul has navigated galaxies. You are not new here, you are just waking up, and the world around you, it's not prepared for what's awakening inside of you. Because when a chosen one begins to remember, reality begins to shake, systems collapse, truths emerge, the noise gets louder. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right, and the illusion knows it. You weren't made to settle here. You weren't designed to be content in a culture that glorifies the shallow and ignores the sacred. That internal restlessness is holy, that longing for something more. It's your spirit's compass pointing you home. Not a physical place, but a frequency, a way of being that transcends everything around you. This is why you've always struggled with belonging. Why you see through people faster than you can explain. Why you crave silence in a world addicted to noise. Why you yearn for truth like it's oxygen. Because you were made to remember and to help others do the same. There's a part of you that doesn't trust this world. Not because you're paranoid, but because you've seen too much, even if you don't remember how or why. You sense manipulation beneath smiles. You feel darkness in places that seem light. You detect distortion in systems that everyone else calls normal. And the most painful part, you tried to ignore it. You tried to silence that voice inside you, to force yourself to play the game, to smile, to nod, to do what they do. But your soul wouldn't let you, because you're not here to play the game. You're here to rewrite it. And now, the memories are coming back, slowly, in fragments, in dreams, in feelings you can't put into words, in moments when a song, a scent, a silence triggers something deep inside of you that no language can contain. You've tried to explain it to others. They laughed, they called it weird, they called you crazy. But the truth is, you were ahead of them. You weren't lost. You were just early. You felt the shift before it came. You heard the call before it was spoken. And now, as the world spins faster, your spirit is steadying. Not because you found peace in this world, but because you finally accepted. This world was never meant to be your peace. You are a traveler, a messenger, a disruptor of illusion. You came here to wake the sleepers, to shine light in systems built on shadows, to carry divine codes into corrupted spaces. That is why you hurt the way you do. That is why you love with intensity. That is why you can't turn it off. Because you were never meant to. You were meant to remember. And if anything in your soul is stirring right now, if your heart is trembling, if your eyes are wet and you don't even know why, just know you're not crazy. You're coming home. Not to a house, not to a country, but to your true nature. And if that voice inside you is whispering, "I've known this all along," then go to the comments right now and write the words, "I remember," or simply, "Home never felt like here." We are building a space for the awakened. You are not alone. You never were. And the most powerful part of your story is just beginning. They never really saw you. Not because you were invisible, but because they were blind. Blind to truth, blind to light, blind to the mirror your presence became. Because if they dared to look at you with clear vision, if they let themselves feel what you carried, if they sat for even a moment with your energy, they'd have to confront every part of themselves they've been hiding from. And that terrified them. You weren't too much, you were too true. From the moment you stepped into their orbit, something in them stirred. You didn't have to speak. You didn't have to prove anything. Your silence alone was a revelation. You reminded them of something they tried to forget, that they were living in illusion, that they had compromised, that they had buried their fire just to survive. So instead of facing their shadows, they projected them onto you. They called you dramatic, too emotional, too deep, too sensitive, too intense, too different. But deep down, what they really meant was, "You make me feel something. I've been trying not to feel. You made them remember. And that memory was a threat to everything false they had built around themselves. So they tried to silence you. They mocked you when you were honest. They rolled their eyes when you shared your dreams. They laughed at your questions. They minimized your pain. They told you to grow up, to get real, to be realistic, to be more like them. Because if you woke up, if you fully stepped into your truth, if you let the flame burn through every lie that had been wrapped around your identity, they'd have to deal with the fact that they never had the courage to do the same. You weren't unsafe. You were unstoppable. And people don't fear what's wrong with you. They fear what's right with you, what's raw, what's holy, what's real. And that's why the system had to keep you small. Because if a chosen one awakens too soon, if they rise before the world has diluted their purpose, if they remember who they are before they're broken down by culture, religion, and control, then nothing can stop them. And the system knows that. This world isn't afraid of conformity. It's afraid of consciousness, of clarity, of divine rebellion, of someone like you remembering what they came here to do. That's why the attacks came early. Why you were wounded before you could walk. Why they tried to steal your voice before you learned to speak. Because your voice was a weapon, not in the way of violence, but in the way of truth. Your voice carried heaven's frequency. Your presence disturbed the spirits that feed on silence. Your light burned holes through the darkness in others, and some of them weren't ready to be seen. So they isolated you, rejected you, turned your compassion into weakness, your discernment into paranoia, your fire into shame. But here's the secret they never wanted you to find out. You survived. Every curse, every lie, every rejection, every betrayal. They underestimated you. They thought if they pushed hard enough, you'd fold. That if they ridiculed you long enough, you'd quit. That if they ghosted you, ignored you, criticized you, you'd disappear. But you didn't. You carried it, all of it. You wept, you prayed, you fought battles no one saw, you walked through nights darker than death, and still, you rose. You rose in silence, in private, in tears. You rebuilt yourself not with applause, but with faith, and now they feel it. The shift, the change, the power you reclaimed. You're not hiding anymore. You're not shrinking to make others feel comfortable. You're not begging to be seen by people who were never qualified to witness your becoming. You know who you are now. You know what you carry. You know why the enemy fought you so hard, because of the call that never left you. And the moment you accept it, the moment you decide, the moment you stop apologizing for your fire, everything around you starts to tremble. Because they were never fighting you. They were fighting what you would become if you ever woke up. But now you're waking up, and you're not alone. Across the world, other chosen ones are rising, coming out of hiding, tearing through lies, breaking generational curses, reclaiming the language of the soul, disrupting the silence with sacred sound. You are part of a frequency that cannot be stopped, a revolution of remembrance, a revival that no system can contain. And yes, they will try again. They will try to call you names, to tell you it's all in your head, to call you crazy, intense, too spiritual, too sensitive. But now you'll know better. You'll recognize it for what it is, fear disguised as criticism. And when they try to shrink you again, you won't bend, because now you understand you were never meant to be palatable. You were never meant to be predictable. You were never meant to be safe. You were meant to shake empires, to walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, to carry a presence that breaks chains without saying a word, to awaken others just by being fully alive. So if you feel it now, if your spirit is stirring, your chest is heavy, your soul feels like it's burning in the best way, that's the confirmation. You're remembering, you're reclaiming, you're returning to the fire they tried to drown. And if this spoke to you, go to the comments. Type the words, "They tried to silence me, but I remember who I am," or simply, "I'm awake now." Let's light this comment section with the fire of the ones who refuse to be erased. Let's stand together. The misfits, the sensitive, the silent warriors, the dreamers, the prophets, the disruptors, the chosen ones. And we're not done yet, because what comes next will expose everything. The reason nothing ever felt like home, the reason every space felt too small, every conversation too surface, every system too broken, wasn't because you were defective. It was because you were set apart from the beginning, from the womb. Before your body ever took shape, your soul had already been sealed with purpose, but no one told you. So you wandered, you doubted, you waited for someone else to give you permission to be what you already were. The crowd was never meant to claim you. You weren't designed to follow blindly. You weren't built to conform. You were born for the storm. You are the type of soul that God hides in plain sight, not to punish you, but to protect you. Because you were never meant to arrive with noise and glitter. You were meant to arrive in silence, watch, observe, absorb the terrain, and then shift it. That's why the first half of your life felt like delay, like rejection, like nothing was happening. But behind the scenes, you were being prepared, trained in the hidden, sharpened by pain, refined by isolation, awakened by spiritual fire that no human hand could extinguish, because your time wasn't then, it's now. The world is crying out for truth, real truth, the kind that doesn't bow to trends, that doesn't serve ego, that doesn't dilute light to be digestible. The world is starving for authenticity, and the real ones are rising. They're remembering that they were sent, remembering that they carry the code, remembering that normal was never the goal, transcendence was, and now that memory is awakening in you. That ache in your chest isn't confusion, it's the call, a sacred whisper echoing louder every day. It's time. Time to stop hiding, time to stop waiting, time to stop asking for permission to be who heaven already ordained. You were sent ahead for a reason, because what's coming, what's shifting, what's unraveling in the world right now needs you. Not the version of you that plays it safe, not the version of you that shrinks to stay accepted, not the version of you that numbs the truth just to stay liked. It needs the real you, the you that remembers, the you that sees beyond the veil, the you that knows silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's fear pretending to be spiritual. The you that's been marked, tested, broken, rebuilt, and called again. You were sent ahead so you could navigate the path before others even knew there was one. So you could learn the terrain, so you could map the spirit, so you could stand when others fall, so you could speak when others are still afraid to open their mouths. That's why your pain was specific. That's why your path didn't make sense to others, because it wasn't for others. It was for your becoming. You weren't called to be relatable. You were called to be undeniable. And when you finally rise, fully, unapologetically, without filters, without needing the world's validation, you create a rupture in the atmosphere. The frequency shifts, the spirit realm reacts, the enemy trembles, because a chosen one who remembers who they are is the most dangerous force on earth. And you are remembering. You feel it now, in your bones, in your breath. In the way, every word of this message feels less like new information and more like a revelation of something you've always carried. You're not just part of the shift. You are the shift. You're not just stepping into purpose. You are the purpose. You are the answer to prayers your ancestors cried in silence. You are the embodiment of prophetic promises they never lived to see. You are the fulfillment of words spoken generations ago. You are a living portal, and now the path is clear. Not easy, not without resistance, but clear. Because now you know what they tried to make you forget. You were never too much. You were always too divine for systems built to control. And as you walk forward, as you step into the unknown with fire in your chest and purpose in your eyes, you'll notice something strange. You're not afraid anymore. You're not shrinking anymore. You're not explaining yourself anymore. Because this isn't just a transition, it's a return to who you've always been, to why you were sent. And if anything in this message has felt like prophecy, like confirmation, like sacred memory being reactivated in your soul. Don't keep it inside. Let your voice join the others. Go to the comments and write, "I accept the call." Or if your spirit is still finding its voice, just write, "I'm ready." Speak it, claim it, anchor it. Because once the call is accepted, nothing, no system, no opinion, no doubt can stop what comes next. And what comes next will reveal why you were chosen long before you ever took your first breath. If you made it this far, if something in your spirit was moved, if at any moment during this message you felt the presence of something higher, not just words but the voice of God Himself, then this is your invitation. Subscribe to this channel, not just to follow a creator, but to stay connected to a frequency that will continue awakening what was always inside you. And if you're still here right now, that means your soul recognized the truth. So go to the comments and write, "I heard him." Let the others know they're not alone. Let the ones who are still silent see your voice and feel safe to rise. We're not building just a channel, we're building a sanctuary for the chosen. If this video spoke to you, leave a like, not for the algorithm, but to signal to heaven and earth, I'm still standing, I'm still listening. And don't stop here, because everything you've ever wondered about your past, the strange things you saw, the unspoken feelings, the signs no one could explain, it all has meaning. Watch the next video appearing on your screen now, where I reveal the childhood signs that prove you were chosen since the beginning.